Lewis Hamilton, he's written his own Formula One obituary. He's said that he's useless. He's intimated that there's an awful lot of noise behind the scenes. Something is not quite right with the 7-time world champion.
I'm sure Zach Brown had a little heart attack there because that's the worst moment for a driver and a team boss, to see your two cars almost collide. And I think this was more luck than talent that they didn't touch each other into turn one. And I know Lewis is working very, very hard, and I think some of the Lewis fans won't appreciate if I mention this topic, that he might be getting too old for Formula One to play at the highest level. But all signs are there that he might pass his sell-by date. Max's contract is worth a lot of money, as you can imagine. So perhaps then Mercedes and Verstappen thought, you know what, we're going to look how 26 ends up, who has the best package, and we can continue to talk. And I don't see Christian going into the political role of working in the FIA. I don't think that's part of his DNA. He was basically the boss of everything. But the only thing he couldn't get was stakes in the team, shares. So if you look at becoming a shareholder in an organization and make the organization grow and successful, then Alpine is the most logical choice, because Alpine is struggling, as we all know.
Welcome to another instalment of the Pit Talk podcast, powered by Thara. Myself, Chris McHardy, joined as always by the former Red Bull, former Minardi driver, Robert Doornbos. And there's a saying that, a week's a long time in politics, and that is very much true of Formula One over the course of the past 7 days. We're reflecting on what was an entertaining Hungarian Grand Prix. It would eventually be won by Lando Norris. We're going to unpack that over the course of the next 45 minutes. Lewis Hamilton, he's written his own Formula One obituary. He's said that he's useless. He's intimated that there's an awful lot of noise behind the scenes. Something is not quite right with the 7-time world champion. We're going to get to that. Max Verstappen's future, it's done and dusted. He is staying at Red Bull for now. We're going to get Robert's thoughts on all of that. Zach Brown has been saying that F1 is better without Christian Horner as well. I'm maybe paraphrasing just a tad there, but we're going to get into all of that. And then what does the next 4 weeks of this summer little sojourn look like? We'll get Robert's take on that as well. And without further ado, let's welcome our nomadic adventurer. He's been to Ibiza, he's been in Greece, he's been in Turkey. Where are you now, Robert? Hello and welcome back to the podcast.
Chris, pleasure seeing you again. It's been only 7 days, but good to be back. And at the moment I'm in the Netherlands preparing some stuff for the big one, the Dutch Grand Prix, straight after the summer break. That is the race where the fight will continue, and I think the championship fight will go down all the way to the wire in Abu Dhabi. That's something that we predicted when we started the podcast together with Itara, that is going to be another big final in Abu Dhabi at Yas Marina Circuit. But until then, we have the second half of the season, and now we can look back at the first half. Yes, traveling a lot in the summer break. I think the heat was quite tough in Dubai. Or how about you? Are you surviving?
I'm surviving just, my friend. I tell you what, though, I want to let all of our listeners and viewers into a little secret. We had a nightmare. You were sunning yourself on a luxurious yacht this time last week, Robert, and then to send the files that we need to make this podcast, we had an absolute nightmare. So can I just say thank you to your beautiful wife for being patient, because I think you were in more internet cafes than I care to even imagine over the course of the past 7 days.
Unbelievable. I tried everything. I remember it was a family holiday, like you said, in Turkey, and then the captain said, I have a great idea. We're not going to Turkey, we're going to Greece on the other side. We could see it already. Not knowing that the Greece Wi-Fi reception area was disaster. So yes, I went with a boat, with a small dinghy. I mean, the Pit Talk podcast goes all over the globe, and I went to all the cafe bars. They didn't speak any word of English, and I tried to steal their internet, and it was the slowest in the world. So yeah, to send these files, I think it took me 3 days in total, and it drained all the phones on board and all the internet I could find. But finally we got an update from Spa. Unfortunately for the listeners, it was not the most exciting race in Spa. If it would have been a really crazy wet race, it would have been even more painful that we couldn't upload in time. But Yeah, we can have a small recap now again, but we got some data up. Anyhow.
Yeah, well, the good news is we got that podcast out, and I'm just delighted that you're back home, you're in Amsterdam, the Wi-Fi's working, so this podcast should go out in a timely fashion. Now, in terms of the weekend that we just witnessed, I was gripped. I was on the edge of my sofa for very different reasons than perhaps we've seen in recent weeks. Thankfully, the rain stayed away. I say thankfully. I think we're all glad when we see a little bit of rain, but the rain stayed away over in Budapest, and well, we had a really intriguing race, and it ultimately came down to the final 5 laps. Before we get to that, let's kind of reflect on qualifying. Charles Leclerc on pole, Ferrari's first pole of the season. McLaren, I'd say struggling. I guess they were just surprised a little at Ferrari's pace with Charles Leclerc. Yeah. The woes of Lewis Hamilton we'll get to, but overall, what did you make of qualifying?
Well, first of all, home is Dubai now, Chris, so I'll be back home next week and I'll join you in the studio for the next podcast. But yes, I'm in the Netherlands now doing some prep work for the Dutch Grand Prix that's coming up. The Grand Prix in Hungary, I look forward to because it's such a big difference in 7 days to go from a high-speed circuit, which is Spa-Francorchamps, to Hungaroring, which is like a go-kart track for a Formula One car, you know, high downforce. Sweating a lot. Normally it's really, really warm down in that pit. There's a huge aqua park next to it, but there's no time for the drivers to go there, maybe for the mechanics after the race. But all weather forecasts changed a bit. Then they said rain, and they said higher temperatures. And the temperatures, exactly those temperatures, made a difference in qualifying, where McLaren thought this one is in the bag. Well, at least Oscar thought, because his laps were purple, 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 and he was really on it. Then suddenly the temperature dropped, and Ferrari's pace was there, out of nowhere. I mean, even Charles Leclerc was super surprised. He had no chance to be on pole this year, and then suddenly he's on pole in front of everybody. So that was a shocker, as much for you as it was for the Ferrari driver himself.
Yeah, Charles, who did start on pole, it ended up being a very frustrating race day for Charles Leclerc. We're going to touch on that in just a second, but ultimately, Robert, it's well, a bit like the same as we've seen across the season. Yet another McLaren 1-2. Lando taking the spoils. Oscar Piastri having to settle for second place. And, well, an unbelievable drive in the end for Lando because he had a shocker of a start. He started in third. He was soon overtaken by George Russell, Fernando Alonso. He was down in fifth. They had to switch tactics. But I thought he drove beautifully across the day.
Well, that's the thing with Lando nowadays. You see him making a reasonable or a good start, and then he doesn't decide really what to do. So he's indecisive. He goes to the inside. No, he wants to go back to the outside. But then the outside was already taken by Fernando Alonso, the old fox. We should talk about him as well. He had a great weekend in Budapest. And George Russell, he was at a fiery start from P4 on the grid. So suddenly he was caught out in P5, Lando. And then he makes life difficult for himself. But at this time, it was the sort of bad luck that gave him a very lucky shot on an alternative strategy, and it was the nothing to lose strategy. The one stop, they had no idea if the tires would last, and he said to his engineer, okay, let's do it, you know, we have nothing to lose. And nobody predicted that the hard tire would last so many laps. I mean, it was, again, you could say, like last weekend, it was a Pirelli championship weekend, due to the fact that the full wets were not good enough to drive on, and the race was done on Inters. And we know this story, but now it was more of a story like, how good are the hard compounds? And a one-stopper was on paper not really the fastest one, but in real life and practice it was. And yeah, amazing that he won the race with this gamble.
Incredible, Robert. You mentioned there 39 laps he went on those harder compound tyres. And then ultimately, in that final 5 laps, he saw off the danger of his teammate Oscar Piastri. Now, it was fascinating for me, Robert, watching it. It's probably the first time that I thought Oscar was a little bit flustered. You know, normally, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but normally when you think of the emotional one of the two, you think it's a little bit more Lando. The Oscar's a little bit more, dare I say, robotic. You know, we talked about it a lot on this podcast, the fact there's no real airs and graces with Oscar Piastri. You know exactly what you're going to get with him. But one or two signs for me over at the Hungaroring that perhaps Oscar's starting to feel it a little bit. I actually think, Robert, and I'll say it again, I think that this may prove to be a defining weekend in the Drivers' Championship. Do you agree?
Yeah, you mentioned this this morning when we spoke to each other, and I agree. I mean, 1-2, 1-2. We all know it's going to be a McLaren Championship between those two drivers, and it's a matter of rolling the dice. And Lando rolled the dice, and he was lucky yesterday, but also because he was pushing to the limit. I enjoy drivers jumping out of the car, and they're really almost out of breath. You know, it was like qualifying laps for Lando, trying to keep his teammate behind. And I think Oscar showed exactly what you say, that he is emotional, because he felt like, I missed this one. He was the defending champion at this circuit. He won his first race there, and then now it got taken away. That's how he feels, and it was also taken away from him in Silverstone. But he's he will fight back mentally. But the penultimate lap into turn 1, I thought he was going to go for it, and he did. And then he locked the wheel, and I was like, this is the worst. I'm sure Zach Brown had a little heart attack there, because that's the worst moment for a driver and a team boss, to see your two cars almost collide. And I think this was more luck than talent, that they didn't touch each other into turn 1.
Am I being a little harsh, Robert? If I look back to those final 5 laps yesterday, do we doff our cap to Lando, or do we look at Oscar and think missed opportunity?
Well, I think for Oscar, if you look at the stats, I mean, his tires were fresher than Lando's, obviously, and then you should extract a little bit more performance out of them. But you could also see that Oscar was struggling to set him up onto the main straight, and he got some oversteer there a few times, so he just lose out on the maximum draft with the DRS open. And then it was Lando being faultless, and he was trying to force his teammate into a mistake, because a small mistake, a lock up there, maybe going a bit wide on the outside of the corners, that would make a difference. And he needed that couple of tenths to make the difference. So the guys were really, tight, and there was not much in between them. And I think then it is what it is. It's for the championship fight very important, because we know there's 7 points difference between finishing first and second. So it was a swing of extending the lead, or, giving a little bit back to your teammate, and the last thing happened.
Yeah, down to 9 points now, the lead between Oscar and Lando at the top of the Drivers' Championship. I can't help but think, Robert, Lando doesn't want this summer break. He won in Austria, he won at Silverstone, he's now won in Hungary, he's won 3 of the last 4 races. He doesn't want to go away and sun himself for a few weeks. He wants to stay in this title tussle.
Yeah, it's sort of a momentum that you're building. And Lando keeps saying there's no momentum because it's just weekend in, weekend out. But it's also to protect himself a little bit. I do think that Lando is worried about the overall pace of Oscar. I mean, he's there, always he's there. I mean, he's fast in qualifying, he has good race pace. He was unlucky with the strategy yesterday, but it's not like he's blitzing away his teammate. In some years that there were teammates fighting for a championship, like Lewis and Nico, apart from 2016, it was decided way earlier in the favor of Lewis. So I think it's very exciting to be part of the McLaren team, but also within the garage, you can feel the tension is rising. So also for the team members, just take a step back. Everybody has to go on holiday, Chris. It's a 2-week mandatory closure of the factory, so everybody can reset their brains for the second half of the season, which will be mega intense.
Yeah, just on that actually, the mandatory closure of the factory, there might be a lot of people not aware of this. Break that down for us, Robert. So essentially, the mechanics, the engineers, no one is allowed on site. Are they allowed to be talking shop? Will there be WhatsApp groups? What is the actual rule? Because I think a lot of people who perhaps have come new to the sport through Drive to Survive might not actually be aware of this.
No, true, because before Drive to Survive reached us, Formula One calendars were way shorter, and we never had triple headers, maybe a double header if it was really close by within Europe. You go from Hockenheim to Magny-Cours in France or something. But it's about the intensity for all the staff members as well, that it's mandatory now just to take a step back 2 weeks. So you cannot go to the factory, you cannot develop your car anymore. I mean, everything has to really shut down. So that's more like a HR component of working in a Formula One team. And I think it's fair enough, because some of these guys and girls nowadays traveling with a Formula One team, they miss their families for 3 weeks straight, or sometimes 4 weeks. So it's for them also a dream come true. Do not forget, as a driver, it's your dream to become a Formula One driver. But as a mechanic and engineer or marketing, it's also a dream to work in the Formula One environment. So you have to pay your toll as well, and to go on a holiday for 2 weeks, that's mandatory. I think you should do that as well with the radio network. Mandatory holidays.
Yeah,
you work too hard.
I'll put that to the bosses, Robert. I'd love that. Where we just have to close down the radio for a few weeks, just to, just to replenish the energy levels more than anything else. I wonder, Robert, who's going to get your yacht that you had over in Greece? There's going to be an engineer and mechanic on that yacht for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, I heard that Max straight away, he flew yesterday from his disastrous Grand Prix weekend in Hungary. He jumped on his jet straight to his holiday destination in the south of France. Most of the drivers will chill out. I know that Sebastian Vettel always chartered a yacht from a friend of mine in the summer, and it had to have enough toys and enough fuel on board to, make sure he was getting his kick during the summer break. Everybody is gonna relax a little bit, and I think it's good. And some guys go on holiday with a great feeling. Aston Martin, for example, they come from a disastrous weekend in Spa-Francorchamps, where they were almost dead last, and now they had 2 cars in the points, with the old Fox leading the pack, and they scored some really good points. So it's also a mindset that you go into. Okay, we're happy, we're ready for the second half, or like Ferrari, we don't know what to do anymore. We have one 7-time world champion who cannot qualify the car and cannot race it properly anymore. And we have Charles Leclerc, who almost won a race for us. And then we had another problem with the car, which meant he didn't. So, it's a tough sport. From hero to zero in one day.
Absolutely. That's why we love it as much as we do, Robert. Just on the subject, actually, of Ferrari, it was a bizarre weekend for the Scuderia. You had Charles Leclerc, as you've already alluded to, shocked, beyond shocked that he was on pole. You then had Lewis Hamilton speaking to the media, talking about the fact that he was useless, that the team should look to replace him, essentially, and I said this at the top of the podcast, essentially almost writing his own F1 obit, the kind of almost down and out, talking about him essentially ending his own career.
Yeah, what do you make out of it? I mean, you speak to a lot of professional athletes and former athletes. I mean, it all has to do also with a bit of confidence, almost cockiness. I'm the best. I'm one of the all-time greats, not the greatest 7-time world champion. If you see him speak like this, what will also the Ferrari shareholders think and the people that got him on board? I mean, you cannot say that, right? I was shocked when he said the car is on pole, I shouldn't complain, maybe they should change the driver. But really with a sad face, not like a joke with a little wink, but it's, I think it's Lewis. After the 2021 moment in Abu Dhabi, we have never seen the real Lewis Hamilton again.
No, we've not. And I tell you, it's interesting, Robert. I was fortunate. I've spent a bit of time with him. I did an interview with him not long after Abu Dhabi. And I said this, I think we actually maybe touched on this on the podcast recently. His negativity, Robert, is quite something. This isn't new. We saw it in Mercedes, the fact he said, listen, I'm not up to it, the car's not good enough. There's just a bubble of negativity around Lewis. And dare I say it, the shtick's getting a bit old. It's like, you know what? You're 40 now. If there is this bubble of negativity, despite the fact you're in the conversation as one of the greatest of all time, we don't need this moving forward. He's getting paid 60 million quid for this level of negativity.
I know, and this is exactly what it is. I mean, to be at your best, you have to eliminate negative thoughts. And when you get older, you have to make sure that you work even harder. I mean, the young kids, look at Gabriel Bortoleto. He had an amazing weekend in Hungary. They get fast, they're on point. It's different, right? When you're 20 or when you're 40. And I know Lewis is working very, very hard, and I think some of the Lewis fans won't appreciate if I mention this topic, that he might be getting too old for Formula One to play at the highest level. But all signs are there that he might pass his sell-by date regarding the 7-time world champion, potentially 8-time world champion, because that is the dream that is still in his mind somewhere, and the reason he left to Ferrari. To be the greatest of all time, to do what nobody else have done in the recent years, apart of Michael Schumacher, to change teams and particularly change team to Ferrari and win a championship there, a Drivers' World Championship. Fernando Alonso tried it, Sebastian Vettel tried it, and now the big Lewis Hamilton tries it. And he's way off at the moment, and we all know this, and we all see this. So for him, the summer break is going to be even more important to really go into the second half of the season and motivate your team. What do your mechanics and your engineer feel if you communicate like this to the press and over the board radio? It's not a way of, boosting morale.
Do you think he's over the hill? It's the million-dollar question. You've said that he might be. I'm just going to ask you straight out, Robert. Looking at Lewis Hamilton, is he done?
I think he lost his mojo. If you see the Lewis now and you compare it to the Lewis from 2021, who was really fighting, and look at the moment in the race, fighting for P11, P12 with Max. This was something, Chris. This was sort of a deja vu from Stowe corner or Cops corner. I mean, in Silverstone in 2021, when they were fighting for first and second in the race. Now they were fighting for P11, P12. But Max, in that corner, I've never seen anybody pass. It's blindingly fast and literally blind, because you go up a crest, and I remember it very well, and you just do one downshift, you turn in and you feel the 5G on your neck. There's no space for a car on the inside, and Max just pushed it on the inside, and Lewis went wide and gave him the space. He sort of scared Lewis off, while the big 7-time world champion in the past wouldn't have moved on
no chance.
That easily. So he's not in a good state of mind. And if he's like this, he will never win this 8th championship. And even though I'm a Ferrari fan in heart as well, and I would love to see Ferrari, and I would love to see Hamilton do it, but a lot has to change in 2026 to make that happen.
Now, one thing, and we've had a lot of lovely words and praise on our various channels, and I think it's a good juncture to thank everyone who's watched or listened to the podcast. Yeah. Now, what we get a lot of is people admiring your technical abilities, Robert, your ability in layman terms to explain one or two things for us. So it's interesting to listen to Toto Wolff, and he was obviously defending his boy. They go way back. There's a close relationship there. And Toto was talking about the fact that since ground effect cars came into existence in 2022, Lewis has really struggled. He's a late breaker. He's someone who always prided himself as being someone who would brake late, be aggressive. Is that something? Break that down for us. The ground effect cars. What is Toto Wolff meaning by that?
I think Toto means that Lewis couldn't really adapt to the new regulations, which is strange if you think about the talent that Lewis has shown in the past decade in Formula One. There are many rule changes, and he's always been on it. And look at Max, when all the rules are there, they're changing. Yes, initially the car might not be that good or drivable for his driving style, but then he will adjust it to his driving style. So Max wants a pointy car, he wants the confidence on the front and the rear. He will fight himself and sort it out at high speed, low speed, whatever. And I think with Lewis, he's been complaining very much about the ride heights of the car. And remember in the Mercedes era, when first in 2022, the bouncing on the straights, he couldn't focus. I mean, it's difficult to drive a car like that for sure, but he never got on top of it, saying, okay, now I have the car fully under control and I can push the limits. And that's all about confidence. If you know how the car is going to behave over a bump or when you turn in high speed, then you can extract the limits out of the car. And if you have no feeling whatsoever, then it's tough. I'm telling you, it's tough to turn in at close to 200 miles an hour and just knowing the car will stick instead of you have to catch it, because with those speeds you need really fast hands. So all in all, I think the technical knowledge of Lewis is definitely there, and I think Toto must know this. I mean, he's been carrying the team for almost a decade. But on the other hand, the car also had a big advantage to any other car on the grid. Let's not forget, the Mercedes engine was by far the best engine since 2014, when the new hybrid regulations showed up. So when the engine is that good, the aerodynamic and mechanicals levels are maybe not the best, but the engine will cover for that. Because the lap time is there, the time on the straight is there, and I'm not saying Lewis is not a good driver, because he's obviously mega good with 7 championships, but being in a dominant car, it makes a difference.
Yeah, it does. And, you know, again, extra frustration for Lewis this weekend when you see your teammate in the shape of Charles Leclerc driving the way that he did. He got on pole, of course, disappointment ultimately at the end. He would finish 4th. Now, you got a bit of an insight into this for us, because we saw Charles on the radio. He was furious. I have never heard Charles Leclerc as angry as he was in that race. There was a moment as well with George Russell where he kind of had 2 bites in underbraking, and you thought to yourself, oh my goodness, this is going to end up in tears. What do we know of what went wrong for Ferrari in that race?
Well, first of all, when I heard the radio, I also thought, okay, now he's going to really be complaining about the strategy, and he's pissed off about his team again, because we know this from Charles. He can be emotional on the radio. He can really tell the team what he thinks of them, and that he knows better. Well, in most cases, he was right, because strategy-wise, Ferrari hasn't been outperforming any of the other teams. But this was not anything to do with strategy. I was following his lap times, and he just was losing up to 30 seconds in the remaining 37 laps or something. It was crazy. I mean, the lack of downforce, the lack of confidence on the braking in his battles with George Russell, like you said, he just braked way too early, and it was going from bad to worse. And having been so dominant in the first 40 laps, it was a surprise to me. I mean, I know dirty air makes a difference, which means is when you drive behind another car, it's hard to follow. That's why you saw always a gap of 1.5 or 2 seconds of Oscar. But he was just, you know, making the laps in on the front, and the stints were looking good. And then suddenly, I called my friends in Italy, what's wrong? And they said there was a problem with the chassis. Slowly, the news is coming out now. He might have hit something really hard in the chicane, or a curb just outside the circuit, which can, with the low ride heights, can really make a huge impact on the chassis. The team will have so much data together. They have more than 300 sensors on the car, so they see when the downforce levels drop, or when they disappear completely, when you lose your rear wing, for example. And in this case, it was still safe to continue, but they were losing performance, and a lot of performance. If you lose more than a second a lap, you're in a different league, basically, in Formula One. And that explains his, P4 result. And I looked at him in Parc Fermé, and he was looking at the podium guys and just wondering what could have been, because they don't get many chances to win a race, Ferrari, unfortunately, these days. It was Monaco, a P2 finish, and that's it. So painful.
He was intimating as well on the radio, Robert, and maybe you can shed some insight into this as well. He was intimating that decisions were being made by the team that perhaps he wasn't privy to. And he said, listen, moving forward, we got to be talking about this pre-race. He wants to be involved in the decision-making. What might he have been referring to in that instance?
Well, most of it is strategy. I mean, it's you sort of make a plan A, a B, and you're talking code to your engineer, because what we can hear, the competition can also hear. And these channels are open and clear for everybody, you know? So it makes the sport more fun to watch, because you can understand a little bit of the strategy that is going on. But you have to be careful that you don't give away too much to your competition. That's why they talk in, let's go for plan A or plan B -5, or so you have no idea. This is something you decide pre-race, half an hour before the race. You still discuss it with your engineer, but you have been doing so all weekend. It's something you work to with all the data you have from the tire wear. You say, this is our best plan. And I think nobody had plan A as a one-stopper like Norris did. Because with Norris, it came out of the situation he was in after the first lap, and he lost 2 positions, so they sort of had to do something different than to the guys in front of them. And I think Charles was getting pissed off with the way with the strategy for the tires, or the time that he got called in. And that is very recognizable. I mean, the frustration comes out of his ears. He lost many points and potential podium places because of bad strategy calls.
Yeah, frustration. It did get the better of Charles. I can't help but think, Robert, has frustration ever got the better of you?
Many times, Chris. Many times. And I think the worst one I felt with Lewis, that if you're complaining about your car, we all have this once as a driver, that you say, the car is not good and this, and you have all the excuses, and then you look at at the sign or the TV screens, and you see that your teammate is qualifying on pole, and you're like outside the top 10. That is the worst feeling. And I never said you should change the driver, because I was always scared that the team boss would immediately do that. In Lewis's case, his contract is probably a bit more tough than mine. But yeah, it's never good if you're not the fastest driver in the team, and it's never a great feeling. And I think then frustrations will take the better of you. I would never do something really crazy, but yeah, I had my moments of that I wasn't so proud of myself.
Yeah, and I guess a man who's feeling the frustrations right now is Max Verstappen, who's bid for a 5th world title. I'm not going to say it's over, still 10 races to go, but let's call a spade here. I'd be staggered, absolutely staggered, if Max and Red Bull were to go on and win the championship. That's just not going to happen. But
no.
Big news in the week.
That's not going to happen.
Big news in the week. He's staying at least through until 2026. Of course, it was on this very podcast a number of weeks back. You talked about the existence of those clauses and exit clauses in his Red Bull contract. Ultimately, we've got to the summer break. He's still in the top 3, which means the exit clauses, well, they close. He's going to be at Red Bull next year. What do you know of the situation? And as I said to a good friend of mine, all eyes now, Robert, are on George Russell and his contract talks with Mercedes, because what kind of length of contract is he signing, which will give us an indicator if Red Bull and Mercedes, more to the point, are going to come back for Max at the end of 2026.
Yeah, to be honest, nobody knows who has the best package in 2026. And with all the information that got to my ears and what I know about the talks that were ongoing with the management of Verstappen and Mercedes, it all made sense to move there. I mean, knowing that domination will not be forever. Success will not be forever. Success comes and goes. And if we look at what Max has achieved in his first 200 Grand Prix at the team, I mean, we have to go way back to Barcelona 2016 when he won on his first outing, and now we're here 4 World Championships later, and with all the chaos that was going on behind the scenes, the team boss being fired on the spot, top staff leaving the organization, my feeling is still that Red Bull will not go back to the top anytime soon. And therefore it was a surprise on the one side that he didn't go for the Mercedes deal, which I thought would happen for 26. But on the other hand, the contract is a contract. If you're still in the top 3, then there might be an exit clause, but you have to pay a huge fine. I mean, Max's contract is worth a lot of money, as you can imagine. So perhaps then Mercedes and Verstappen thought, you know what, we're going to look how 26 ends up, who has the best package, and we can continue talks. And therefore, I think to give George peace of mind, I mean, for him, it was a great podium yesterday, but why not give him the contract straight away? And I think George is pushing for a 2-year contract because he wants commitment from the team. He doesn't want to be the 1-year sucker again who's waiting for his seat to be taken by Max potentially at the end of 26. But also for Kimi Antonelli. I mean, Kimi doesn't have a contract either. And the difference in wages is huge. I think also George is asking for 30 million, and I think Kimi is driving for 1 million, which is normal if you're a rookie, but it's not a lot of money for an organization like Mercedes. And they've invested already so much money into Kimi in his career. Why not give him the confidence boost to say, okay, Kimi, you're going to be with us for another year, for sure. It will definitely change the performance of the young Italian because he's been struggling lately. And I think for George, the waiting game is still ongoing. And particularly for Max, it's also difficult now that you announce to the media, I'm staying with Red Bull, and you have the worst weekend of the year with the team. Yeah. Trying all different setups. I even saw pictures of a chassis rolling in, and I think at the end of the day that was for Yuki changing his engine. We're not even talking about Yuki. I mean, he was just running dead last most of the race and wasn't there. So Red Bull looked terrible yesterday, to be honest.
It is. You raise an interesting point about the fact that what it does do is, let's be frank about it, Max Verstappen remains the hottest commodity in all of F1. What it does do is it allows Max, and I don't want to be disrespectful to Red Bull here, but it allows him now in 2026 to see what the best package is, to see what the best car is, who is trending, and come the end of his Red Bull contract, there may well be a bidding war, whether it be Mercedes. Does Aston Martin come back into the reckoning? It gives him options to cherry pick potentially where he wants to continue his career next.
Yeah, but the only thing what you can see, his contract runs until 2028. So every year now, Red Bull will be like, is he leaving or is he not leaving? Because he's basically running the operations. If Max wouldn't be there and you had another Yuki type of driver, which Yuki is a great driver, but he's not a Max Verstappen, you would have a team that is running in the mid-pack or in the back almost. And I think Max will be smart enough, or his management, to update some performance clauses in the contract. Instead of saying, okay, if I'm still in the top 3, I can leave. No, next year, if I'm not in the top 2 before the summer break, I can leave. Some of those performance clauses will be adjusted from Max's side, because there's so much uncertainty from the Red Bull side. Red Bull is huge in making energy drinks, and they're probably the best in the world. They're dominating that market. They're very good in building a fast chassis as a Formula One car, but they're not a car manufacturer. So their Achilles heel has always been the engine. And the engine is a very important part of a Formula One car. And in the Renault days, it gave them success, but it also gave them a lot of headache. When I was driving for them, it was a Ferrari engine. It was a lot of headache as well, because it didn't fit in properly with the chassis. With the Honda, they had huge success with Max, but now the new generation is there, the Red Bull powertrain with Ford support. How good is it going to be as a privateer team to build an engine? Most of the privateer teams just buy an engine from a manufacturer. Williams takes a Mercedes engine. Even Alpine takes a Mercedes engine next year. But Mercedes is not willing to supply engines to Red Bull. Therefore, Red Bull thought, okay, I'm going to build them myself. And I think that's a very bold and very cool way of looking at it. Expensive way of looking at it as well. But it's very uncertain if this engine is going to be the best engine on the grid.
Yeah, of course, we wait and see with that. I guess the other point of contention this past weekend, I don't know if you saw this, Robert, but Zach Brown's comments pertaining to Christian Horner, in which he said he was delighted for Laurent Mekies. He said that the paddock's a far happier place now that Horner is not there. Some barbed comments. Of course, both men have rarely seen eye to eye. We know there have been issues in the past. Interesting comments, though, to say that, F1, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it seems to be a better place without Christian Horner.
Yeah, but Zach Brown is walking on water at the moment. His Formula One team is operating at a dominant way, and his IndyCar team is doing well, and they're expanding into endurance racing. I think the McLaren brand is doing very well, and Zach is taking obviously all the credits for it, and rightly so. He's been doing a great job. He comes from really being last almost on the grid until dominating the sport, and he's never been good friends with Christian Horner. Let's be honest. And I think Toto Wolff hasn't been good friends with Christian Horner. But you need characters as well. And I know Christian from a personal level, and I think he's a great guy. And we had some fun nights always in England. And he must be a tough boss as well. And he stood for his operation. But I think if you have a paddock full of Laurent Mekies, which are great guys, but they're not the characters like a Flavio, Eddie Jordan, probably Christian Horner now. That will make a difference in the sport, and I think it's also important for the sport to have some really dominant team bosses.
Yeah, not wrong. I'm with you on that, and there is no doubt that Christian Horner is a character. You said it a few weeks back. You feel that it will only be a matter of time before Christian is back in F1. What are your spidey senses telling you? I'm hearing whispers again. Alpine seems to be the logical choice. You said that on day one, so you did, Robert. Do you still feel that Horner Christian will be back in Formula One next year?
Yeah, once this sport runs through your veins, you cannot say goodbye. And I don't see Christian going into the political role of working in the FIA. I don't think that's part of his DNA. He's more of a racer. He just loves to spend his his Sundays on a Grand Prix weekend, and now he's spending it on a horse in England. So it's a bit different horsepower. And I do know what Christian wanted at the end of the day at Red Bull. He wanted basically dominance of all organizations, even from the marketing till the Formula One team, till the Red Bull powertrains. He was basically the boss of everything. But the only thing he couldn't get was stakes in the team, shares. And to become a stakeholder is something that gives you true power, and you can grow then with an organization. Look at what Lawrence Stroll did with Aston Martin. Only a few years, well, 2017, he bought the team for 120 million pounds, if I'm correct. And the team is now valued at 3.6 billion. So if you look at becoming a shareholder in an organization and make the organization grow and successful, then Alpine is the most logical choice, because Alpine is struggling, as we all know. Renault support is not there, so there's no really factory support. But if you're a team boss in that organization, you can, especially with his curriculum, he can get shares in the team and build the team from scratch to perhaps championship winning days again.
Yeah, well,
so that's a good option. I don't see him move to like an Aston Martin, or for example, but I do see him stay with an English team and not go to Ferrari, even though Ferrari would love to have him. But they've just signed Frederic Vasseur, the current team boss, or extended his deal. So it will be, I think Alpine is the most logical choice.
Yeah, watch the space on it. Right, we've got another special edition, a summer edition of the Pit Talk podcast powered by Thara. So do check out for that on all your usual podcast platforms and our YouTube channel. Last one from me now, though, as we reflect on the Hungary Grand Prix. Robert, you know where I'm going with this. Driver of the day, who gets the Robert Doornbos seal of approval?
You have to give the rookie the credits he deserves. I mean, Gabriel Bortoleto, Brazilian star, having won in all junior categories, making his debut in Sauber. It's a difficult team to show what you can do. His mentor, his manager, his mentor is Fernando Alonso. And they were neck and toe, heel and toe all weekend, basically, running for P5, P6. So he was very proud of his student, and you can see the growth of Gabriel Bortoleto. I think Audi will be very pleased to have him on board as well for next year. As a rookie on circuits he knows in Europe, he really made a difference. On the other places it was more difficult for him, like the first time in China and that stuff. But driver of the day has to be Gabriel Bortoleto.
A big fan of him as well. He is a young man with a massive future in F1. Right, Robert, I am looking forward to you joining me back here at the Mille Miglia Cafe Gallery here in Dubai. I've missed you over this summer, Robert, so come on back, come and join me again, and we've got some very special guests on the way in the coming weeks as well. So safe journey back to Dubai, my friend, and we'll see you here to review what I'm sure will be an unbelievable Dutch Grand Prix after the summer break.
Yeah, looking forward to that one, and I'll see you soon.
Top stuff. The voice of Robert Doornbos, Chris McHardy. Do subscribe to us. You can follow us on all your usual social media platforms as well. The Pit Talk Pod. It is the Pit Talk. It is powered by Thara. And a reminder, all roads do lead to Abu Dhabi. The Formula One Etihad Airways Abu Dhabi.
Can you pick me up from the airport, or you still have no license?
I will. I'll make sure an Uber's picking you up. Don't you worry about that, because since you've been gone, I've taken no lessons. Right, we'll be back with you for another edition very soon on the Pit Talk Pod, powered by Thara.